I think it's really interesting when I do work with teams that are trying to launch a new platform or move into a new market or just work in the space of innovation. Sometimes there's a leader that is standing at the top of the new mountain and sort of, like gesturing to the team, come join me. It's bright and sunny and exciting up here. And the team is actually on the last mountain that the last leader asked them to scale. And maybe it was successful. Maybe they got some acknowledgement and things went well, or maybe not. And so I love Bruce Tuckman's stages of team development because it's really helpful in helping leaders understand how to not only create the potential for their teams to succeed, but a path for them to come off of that mountain that they're on and join them on the next one. And it doesn't look like a swing line that goes from one peak to the next. It actually requires the leader to go down into the trenches at the bottom, at the foothill of the mountain, and acknowledge where they're coming from, right? It requires them to allow that team, whether they're a new team or an existing team, to reform how they want to work together, how they want to win together, the processes, the systems, the tools, the people that they'll need. And when that step of forming is skipped, that's when teams get stuck in the wallow of the foothill, storming. And if the leader doesn't acknowledge it and do something about it, eventually they just disband and nothing moves forward. But if they're given that chance to form and create that blueprint of how they want to work and win together, then they can start to practice that together. And that's when they'll normalize. And eventually, with enough practice, they can start to perform and do that job really well and do it together really well. And so the natural question that a leader will ask is, well, what's it going to take to get the team to that, to join me, to start to perform? And when I use the word trust, there's this visceral sort of like a retreat, a step backward. And some of them might say, aren't we overthinking this? I just want to like launch this thing. Can't we just get people the tools and the training to get them to be ready and prepared to do this work? And the answer is, well, it depends. It depends on how you've been measuring the score ever since. And I think where we get stuck is that we tend to measure based on objective performance. So we look at things like sales metrics and the ability for a team to launch the project, right? And so the question there is like, well, how are we doing? And it's like, well, based on the numbers, looks like we're doing great. But there's another axis to this, and it's, how did the team feel about getting to that finish line, about getting to the top of that mountain? And I think we either ignore this x-axis or we just kind of conflate the two. We assume that by having great numbers, the team must feel great about that. They must feel proud. It must have worked out. And so the goal, of course, is to have both of these things, a win for both, to do great work and to feel great. But if you look behind the covers, under the covers, inside most teams, what's happening is they're doing good work. Maybe it's great, but they're doing some degree of good work. But when you ask the team how they feel about it, not so good. And with enough, right? So this is the team that is sort of like falling between norming and storming. And with enough of that, they fall back into the trenches. And now their work starts to suffer because they don't feel great about how it's going. And so what they have to do is take steps to go back. They have to, and this is where it's really hard. They have to go back and they have to re-normalize and reform how they want to work together. And with a little bit of like going backward, they can then start to move forward, because what starts to happen is they start to feel good again about who's on the team and how they can trust one another. And they start to have more and more creative ideas so that they can get back to the top of doing great work and feeling great at the same time. So, trust is a central component to trust, and performance of a team are together. You can't have one without the other. So the investment in trust will always pay dividends on the performance of a team.